Okay.
Alright.
The video's not very well. I think it's not. It doesn't have very good quality right now.
Okay.
I think because of the internet and the weather. And all
Okay.
that. But we'll go ahead and proceed. We do have 8 watchers.
Okay.
So I just want to welcome Gavin to the Media Lab.
Thanks for putting this on for me. I really appreciate it. So I'm interested in this topic. I appreciate everybody, coming together to give me a one-on-one. Well, not one-on-one, a group-on-one presentation.
Yeah, no
It's
problem.
been noted.
Okay.
That you're very, very supportive.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
we might be getting another
Yeah.
guest.
We're full.
Yeah.
There's no more room.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, we had
Oh,
two.
it's Terry.
Okay, two subs.
Oh, she's part of the crew?
No, she's not part of the crew.
Oh,
I just know her. All right, welcome. We're just getting ready to get started. So.
Hi, how are you? Very nice.
I was just doing a little, we're, going live. So
Introing it.
intro.
It's been
Yeah.
webcast.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead and see. But welcome.
Sorry.
So
No, you're fine.
Monica Ross Williams, she has her own show on Blog Talk Radio,
Yes.
and it's called.
Independent Underground Radio Live.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she'll be speaking on adding your own voice to the podcast medium.
Yeah.
So people online can either on Twitter using the hashtag Media Lab Chat can ask questions, or they can type it right into the chat box.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd
Thank
be
you.
great. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone that's listening in on the live chat and our attendees here, braving the weather today. I definitely appreciate you coming out. We're going to be talking about adding your voice to the podcast medium, and this is something for me anyway that is very exciting. Since I host a podcast, and I love to have other people bring their voices onto podcasting. I think it's a great way to, not only advance whatever causes or whatever particular even interest that you have, but in the same aspect, have other people learn about it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Monica Ross Williams, and again, this is sponsored by Southeastern Michigan Media Lab. So, all right. So I told you my name, hello, and we're going to start this adventure in podcasting by telling you a little bit about me. So my podcast is Independent Underground Radio Live. It's hosted on the Blog Talk Radio Network, and it started in October of 2010. The original name of the program was Reach Out Job Search, and the program originally focused on unemployment advocacy, career management, and also job search. Now, 1 year later, I came to the realization that politics and unemployment advocacy were interconnected. So after speaking with my mentor, Tom Athens, and he actually is one of the co-founders of Air America Radio, if people remember Air America Radio. He is here actually locally in the southeastern Michigan area. Mr. Athens gave me 2 pieces of advice that has really helped grow my podcast. Number 1 was to change the name of my show, and then number 2 was to provide an independent voice when it comes to political matters, because my particular podcast deals with politics. Now from there, my podcast, which was again Reach Out Job Search or RLJS Radio, was changed into Independent Underground Radio Live, and since has become my life passion. Seriously, okay. So what is this workshop going to cover? Well, this workshop is going to cover all the basics of podcasting 101, including what's a podcast, how to start a podcast. Okay, I'm interested, so what are the costs associated with it? Naming your podcast or my podcast 101. 7 days, so many hours. What are the best times to air your podcast? Where's the switchboard? The ins and outs of podcast notes, the importance of social media and podcasting, and can I make money with my podcast? And if so, how can I do so? Okay, so let's start with the beginning. Podcasting. What is that? In short, podcasting is an audio or video recording made available via the internet. For some, which for some includes a mechanism of subscribing to text, so that new episodes can be automatically downloaded for the user, or the user is automatically notified. And the user basically is the listener or the person that's supporting or listening to your podcast. Now, podcast uses are limitless. They can cover pretty much any subject across the gamut. From news to just doing interviews, if you just want to do political debates. If you're into music, you can actually do those on podcasts, business subjects, tutorials, and much, much more. Podcasts are syndicated via a digital media, which consists of an episodic series of audio and video files that are subscribed to, downloaded through web syndication, or streamed online via a computer or mobile device. And when I say mobile device, we'll be talking about those a little bit shortly. The list of video files associated with a podcast is maintained centrally via a distribution server, which is known as a web feed. The listener or viewer employs a special client application software known as a podcatcher that assists in accessing web feeds, checking for podcast updates, and also downloading any new files. So I just wanted to give a couple seconds to at least the people that are in the room. Did you have any questions about that before you move on to the next slide? Okay. Hi, how are you?
Sorry.
Oh, you're great. No problem. So how can I start a podcast, right? There are so many places that you can actually go on and might as well pretty much have a server that will help you distribute your podcast. But what I did here is that I kind of went and got the top 5, and we're going to talk about those, okay? So the ones that we're going to talk about right now includes Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker, Podbean, Libsyn, and also SoundCloud, okay? So we'll start with Blog Talk Radio. So Blog Talk Radio, if you cannot see that, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll give you the web address. It is www.blogtalkradio, and that's blog as in BLOG talkradio.com. Now, Blog Talk Radio has about well over 60,000 podcasters that use that medium. It is a great beginning. It's a great beginning resource for podcasters who are just starting, and they also have a very strong customer service department. So if you're needing help, in regards to different areas of your podcast, their customer service department is available pretty much, might as well say Monday through Sunday, business hours. So really between the hours of 9 a.m. all the way up until 7 o'clock at night. And you can actually access that online. Yeah, and they actually do a live chat with you, which is nice. It's easy syndication with iTunes and Stitcher, and also a lot of the other mediums that you can use for podcasting, which we'll talk about those later. It also includes a virtual switchboard and ability to take live calls. Now, why I choose, and we're going to talk about the other ones, but why I choose Blog Talk Radio is because of the easy syndication with taking live calls. The live calls are handled through Skype. You don't have to have additional mixer, which we'll talk about a little later, or basically, you might as well say a sound. It's almost like a separate sound mixer that you'll need in order to be able to syndicate through your computer, so you don't get that echo effect when people are listening into your podcast. So you don't have to have that with Blog Talk Radio, because as long as you got Skype, it goes right through very easily. Okay. Now the next one is Spreaker, which is it's a very popular podcast medium. And that is spelled, just in case you're listening on a live chat, it's spelled SPREAKER.com. Now, Spreaker has over 40,000 podcasters. There is a small learning curve. Hi, how are you?
Cool.
Good. It is a small learning curve to adaptation. And the reason why I say that is because, again, if you want to take them live calls, you're going to have a sound mixer, or you're going to have to pretty much do some authentications on your computer in order to make sure that you reduce the echo effect, okay? Now, it does include a virtual switchboard, which is very nice. And when I say virtual switchboard, is that the switchboard literally shows up on your computer. So you don't have to have like a separate type of sound mixer in order to at least operate the switchboard part of it. Now, in order to make sure that your sound is correct and in the echo effect, yes, you do, but otherwise than that, no. It is affiliated with iHeartRadio. Basically, you have the option with Spreaker. If they choose your podcast, you actually ask them to review it. If they choose your podcast, they will actually syndicate that particular podcast with iHeartRadio, which is really nice. And then you also still have the option of syndication with iTunes and Stitcher. And you do have the ability to take live calls with a soundboard. Now next, you have Podbean. Podbean, again, for you listening on live chat, that is pod as in Pod, bean, and BEAN.com. Okay. Now, Podbean has over 25,000 podcasters. Again, there is a small learning curve to adapt to the medium with Podbean because basically Podbean, even though it does have the switchboard that is included, you still have to have the sound effects correct in order to not have that echo. In other words, they don't have the easy syndication with Skype. Now, they do. They actually never changed that. They do have a version of a virtual switchboard, but it's not as strong as it would be with Speaker or Blog Talk Radio. It does have an easy syndication with iTunes and Stitcher, and they do have unlimited storage options. So in other words, when I say that will allow you to store your podcast feeds, or better yet, your sound file on their site. So they do have that. That is available. Now, Libsyn is extremely popular with a lot of podcasters, especially if you're very affiliated with the podcast medium. The reason why is because it does have very easy syndication. It does not include a virtual switchboard. You are going to have to basically download software in order to have that switchboard with Libsyn, but you do have that ability in order to basically still distribute your podcast. So the learning for adaptation on that is medium. They do have the limited storage options available, and you must have a sound recorder on your computer, and might as well say a sound mixer that's hooked up to your computer. Now, SoundCloud, and that's another medium. Now, SoundCloud is primarily a podcast feeder service. And what I mean by that is that it allows for very easy embedding of your sound files. So if you want to record a podcast, and this is one that you're not taking live calls, you're pretty much just giving information. You want to record that on your computer, basically even using your sound recorder that you have on your computer, and some nice headphones. You can do that basically, and then upload that via SoundCloud. And it's very easy at that point in order to distribute your sound out via like Facebook or Twitter, because SoundCloud brings up an embed that will allow the listener to listen to your podcast right away. Now, it's a great platform to promote, again, your pre-recorded podcast. It's a small adaptation to the medium, but it's not impossible to learn. They do have unlimited storage with certain packages. And again, you must have a sound recorder on your computer in order to be able to record your podcast. All right, so we're going to move on. I'm sorry, go ahead. You got questions?
On this slide.
Uh-huh.
Are you going to go into more what Stitcher is?
Let's go back to that. So Stitcher and iTunes, okay, so basically how those work. Stitcher basically it's almost like a medium that you can use in order to distribute out your podcast via phone, or people can listen to similar to SoundCloud. The one thing I do like about Stitcher is that you can download an Android app, and you can also have your listeners download that Android app. If they wanted to listen in the car via a AC plug, they can actually do that and still be able to listen to your podcast on the road. That's the main advantage of Stitcher. It's an alternative for folks that don't have iTunes or an Apple-enabled device on their phone to still be able to listen to podcasts mobilely.
Interesting. So the easy syndication, it goes straight to iTunes and to Stitcher.
It sure does. Once
Gotcha.
you put your RSS feed in with both of those mediums, your podcast, once you finish airing it, or either once you finish uploading it, via that feed, it automatically syndicates to Stitcher and iTunes. Yep.
And are we going to go into the iTunes later on? Because like you see they've got a photo in there and
Yep.
they've got episodes. Will we cover that later?
Yeah, you can put, if you have any questions about that, it's definitely a question. Hey, Angela, it's a question and explanation portion of our lesson here, and definitely I can answer
Got it.
those questions.
And then the last question on this slide is, so Blog Talk Radio, can you download the MP3 or whatever it is
Yes.
and then upload it to SoundCloud?
You sure can. Now, in fact, that's what I do with my podcast. A lot of people, and this is a question that some folks have, is that with Blog Talk Radio, they technically own the medium, so they also technically own your podcast, okay? But Okay, the good thing about that is that you can always take your podcast, you can download it, okay, you can download it off of Blog Talk Radio, that it still is going to stay there, but you can download it off of Blog Talk Radio, and you can upload it somewhere else, so it's almost uploaded to another server. Now, with that, basically, now let me explain that. So what you had just asked is, can you download your podcast off of Blog Talk Radio and upload it to SoundCloud? Yes. Can you download it and upload it to Libsyn? Sure can. Can you download it and upload it to Podbean? Yes, you can. You can even download and upload it to a speaker if you want to. So you have the option of downloading it and uploading it to any medium. Even though they own the medium of Blog Talk Radio, you still, as the person that produced that sound, have a right to move that sound and take that sound anywhere that you want to take it. I hope that answers your question.
Do they have Blog Talk Radio commercials on the recording?
They do have a commercial that is they announce Blog Talk Radio at the beginning of your podcast.
So people on SoundCloud are going to hear that?
No, they're not. Once you download, that's only when they're on Blog Talk Radio they're going to hear that. So in other words, when you start your podcast on Blog Talk Radio, you do get that. It's like 10, 15 seconds. It says Blog Talk Radio. And
is that you that do it?
Right, yeah, I can almost do it. And if you're listening also, basically on Blog Talk Radio and particularly, you might get a commercial before the show, and you might get a commercial after the show ends. But once you take down the sound itself and you upload it somewhere else, you won't hear that.
And can you charge for it elsewhere or whatever? Can you delete it off Blog Talk Radio? Like, do they exercise any no, you can't do this?
No, you can always once you download your sound file, you can upload it somewhere. Like for instance, you can upload it on Libsyn or Podbean or even SoundCloud if you want to put it as a private file, and then basically have people if they want to access that on SoundCloud, they would have to buy it in some form. The only thing is that you also have to turn around and you have to make your podcast and Blog Talk Radio private. And the reason why I say that is because if you leave them as public, right, and you're trying to charge for the sound somewhere else, okay, they're going to be able to go back to Blog Talk Radio and get that sound for free. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to basically, make a long story short about that, you have to make the sound private, so only you can access it on Blog Talk Radio, and then you can distribute your sound file out whatever way you want to under a paid server. I hope that makes sense. Okay. All right. Did anyone else have any questions? Okay. All right. So we're going to go to the next slide. It says, okay, I'm interested. What's the cost? Because there is cost associated with podcasting in most cases. Okay. So basically with Blog Talk Radio, you do have the option of if you wanted to do a podcast for 30 minutes once a week, okay, which is not a lot of time, but sometimes people are more trying to basically just do a small amount of time talking about a particular subject. You can do that for free, okay? The next part is that you can do 2 hours of airtime for up to 7 days a week for $39.99 a month.
They're making some money.
They are. They are. Now, if you wanted to do 3 hours of airtime up to 7 days a week, and you get a toll-free 800 number that people can call in to your podcast, you can do that. It's $99.99 a month. Okay, and then basically, it's the same thing with the next tier, but what you're getting with that is that you're getting no banner ads on your particular site. So what I mean by that, you have a site with Blog Talk Radio, okay, that's going to give the information about your podcast, and it's going to actually detail the rest of your podcast that you can air. Now, Blog Talk Radio puts a lot of advertising, basically, by that. If you don't want their advertising and you want your advertising instead, just say you want your sponsors' advertising showing on that site, you can do that, but it's going to cost you about $249.99 a month. So what I would say to people, just because of the fact of my experience, I would basically say, well, the best thing for you to do is if you want to do 3 hours of airtime 7 days a week, just get the $99.99 package per month. And then get a separate website where you're, again, downloading and uploading your podcast. And then basically you can have any type of sponsor ads or whatever that's going to be right on your website. So
Is that what you do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so yeah, that way you don't have to pay that $249.99 a month. Yeah. Okay, so now Speaker. Speaker, again, allows you to host up to 30 minutes of podcast time, but you get up to 10 hours a month free. You get 3 hours of time each day. That's 7 days a week for $19.99 a month. Now, some people may look at that like, oh my goodness, well, it's actually better than Blog Talk Radio because I actually get a chance to have a cheaper price and get more time. Which is true, but the only issue is, again, you have to go, and if you're taking a lot of live calls, you got to make sure that you're, having that sound mixer, or you have it, or the sound mixer on your computer so you don't get that echo. Okay, so that's why that explains the difference in price. If people have any questions about that. Now you can go up to 5 hours of airtime 7 days a week for $49.99 a month. And if you want to really do unlimited airtime, you can actually do that. For 7 days a week, it's $19.99 per month. But it's unlimited, but you still only have a maximum amount of storage that you can do each month. That's why you have those extras there. So then we're going to move on to Podbean. Okay, Podbean, you get 100 megabytes of storage and 100 gigabytes of bandwidth. Now, what's the difference between storage? Storage is basically for your files, okay? The bandwidth is basically how well your sound is going to be heard. There's bandwidth from basically 96 gigabytes all the way up to 128, which is basically the normal with podcasts. Some even go, if you wanted to upload your podcast at 256, which is, a really high sound, but it's not really necessary. You can do that too. The only thing is, the higher your bandwidth, the less room that you're going to have in your gigabytes there. I hope that makes sense because I know that that's a little technical. If anybody have any questions about that, I'll be more than happy to answer those. Okay, so then the next with Podbean, you get 300 megabytes of storage and you get unlimited bandwidth. That one's $10 a month. And then you have 1 gigabyte, which is a lot, of storage, and then you have unlimited bandwidth, and you can get 35 private members. I guess you can just send your podcast out to 35 people just privately for $25 a month. And then the next tier is 1.5 gigabytes of storage, unlimited bandwidth. You get multiple channels, so if you wanted to do maybe a news channel, then you want to do a food channel, and the next one you want to talk about celebrity gossip, you can do that, and that is $59 a month. Okay, so then Libsyn, they don't have a free option, but they do allow for 5 megabytes of monthly storage, and you do get a media player. Now, why is that important? Because with Blog Talk Radio, okay, I'm just going to give an example. The media player with Blog Talk Radio has their proprietary material on it. Just say you wanted to have your own media player. So your media player is sitting on your site, okay, and you want to do streaming on your site, okay? Well, with Libsyn, you can actually have that streaming option where people will listen to your podcast live on the site without having to go to Blog Talk Radio or without having to go to Speaker. So you can do that for $5 a month. You're not getting a lot of time with that, but it does give you that option if you just wanted to do a pre-recorded podcast where you're giving out information and you wanted to have people be able to stream that on the website. So, okay. Now with Libsyn also, they do the next option, which is crazy, is they offer 250 megabytes of monthly storage in an HTML5 media player, and that was $15 a month. The next tier is 400 megabytes of monthly storage in the media player, plus you get a smartphone app for $20 a month. And then the last tier is 800 megabytes of storage, the media player, and you still get the smartphone app, and that one is $40 a month. So now with SoundCloud, you can basically get the 2 hours of storage in the embeddable player. That's free. If you you only gonna get 2 hours period. But in the same aspect, I mean, if you wanted to start out with SoundCloud to see, in order to get the player and be able to, see if that is a medium that works for you to get your podcast distributed. That's, you get to 2 hours, you can try that, and if you like it, you can always upgrade to the 4 hours of storage, and you get more detailed stats, plus an embeddable player for $6 a month. And then you can get unlimited storage, detailed stats, and an embeddable player for $15. Now, this is just me. I actually think that the best option for SoundCloud is a $15 a month option. One reason I like SoundCloud is that even though you may think it may just be a medium for independent artists to upload music, podcasts on there is getting very popular on SoundCloud. And so that's another way that you can get, if you're, wanting to get more listeners onto your podcast. If you're putting your episodes up there regularly for people to listen to and obviously distribute among others, that's the way that you can gain an audience real quick. It's with SoundCloud. So just wanted to kind of get that information out to all the people here today. Now, did you have any questions about anything that we just went over?
I just had a comment. I've been using SoundCloud. I've got the free one, and under 2 different email accounts. So then I have 4 hours. But it's very easy to embed in a blog, which I liked. I like the presentation is nice too. It's nice and clean looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing, and that's true. And the other thing is that you can also, if you wanted to have that play automatically, like when people hit your web page or your blog, you can do that with SoundCloud, which is really nice. You can do it with Blog Talk Radio, but it's a little bit more difficult. You got to know a little bit more HTML.
And then people can download them, right? Because I've seen some downloads on them.
Right. Okay. You have the option with SoundCloud to have it being able to, if you have it on a blog, they can actually download it off your blog if you like. If you just want them to listen just on the blog, you can actually set it up so that they can't download it. I love the fact that SoundCloud allows for such easy syndication for people to be able to listen into the podcast, and the quality in the sound quality is really good, especially if you, as long as you, okay, let me explain this a little bit. When you do a podcast, the sound that is going to be on the listener's ear is very important, okay? If your podcast has a poor quality sound, just by uploading it to SoundCloud is not going to make it better, okay? You want to make sure that you have a maximum sound quality before you upload it to SoundCloud, because the reason why is because that's going to help you syndicate and get more listeners for the podcast because of the popularity of SoundCloud. So I hope that makes sense. And there is, this is just another tidbit. If you can actually download, it's called a Sony Sound Organizer. It's free. It's available on the web. It's also basically like it's really more like the way that you can cut your sound, and you can also improve the quality by if the sound is too low, you can actually increase the sound up about, give or take, I would want to say 20-30%. So that way, when you upload it to SoundCloud, you have a maximum sound quality.
What about Audacity? Does that do the same thing? Or?
Yeah, it sure does. Audacity is another medium. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do these services give you enough additional space to load like show notes or links that might be discussed?
Yeah, so like for instance, okay, Blog Talk Radio, you do have to type in your show notes, but they are there. And the same thing with Speaker, you can do that. On Podbean, you can do it. On Libsyn, you're going to have to basically have a separate site. Okay, so in other words, like a blog or something of that nature, a website, and you can put your show notes on that website and along with the embeddable player of the podcast, and people can find out more information about the sound notes that way. In SoundCloud, you can actually include the show notes inside of your sound, inside of the embedded file. So let me make sure I explain that. So with SoundCloud, it allows you to put a title, okay, of the podcast, and then after that, you can describe, which is show notes, what is the podcast about. And so if a person wanted to know more information, all they have to do is just click down in SoundCloud, and they can read all the show notes about what your podcast is going to detail.
Do any of them have a white label option?
A white label option? I'm not sure. Can you explain that just a little?
So it doesn't say SoundCloud, you can pay extra, but you could brand it whatever station you're creating.
Okay, so here's what you kinda. So like if you wanted to do the embeddable player option, if you wanted to go get an off-site embeddable player, you can embed that with, you know, whatever proprietary material from your particular podcast you want. If you're using a SoundCloud embeddable player, you still have the option of basically putting like you have the option of putting your logo, okay, and that will go in a place of like the SoundCloud little cloud. But over to the small, I think it's over to the right-hand side, you're still gonna see the little cloud, okay? And people don't know that SoundCloud, but it's not gonna overtake the
Yeah,
embeddable
so you
player.
can do that, great.
Yeah. All right, did anybody else have any questions? All right, move forward. Okay, so what's the cost part 2? Okay, so in other words, in order to host a podcast, you gotta have some things. You need a computer, that's number one. Basically the computer I use is, and this one, it's a Series 7, 17-inch, times 17.3 notebook, and it has JBL speakers. The reason why I like those speakers is because if I am trying to record sound, so in other words, maybe I have a video that I want to have people listen to, but I want them to listen to it as sound in my podcast, I can turn up my JBL speakers when the speakers get fairly loud on here and record it via the sound recorder that comes on to Windows already, and it's on there. If you just look up sound recorder, it's there. And then basically it comes out as a Windows Media audio file, okay? And I can actually take that into Sound Organizer, change it to an MP3, and then upload it to the podcast. I know that may sound difficult, but trust me, it's very easy. It sounds like it's a lot. You can actually even upload the WMA file into basically like a server, like for instance, if you have Blog Talk Radio, or if you have Speaker, or if you have Podbean, you can actually upload that sound in there to play. You know, maybe you want to play it for a commercial, maybe you want to do a bumper, or maybe it's a previous interview that you did with someone, okay, that you recorded via your computer, and you want to upload it that way. But I recommend. If you don't get, like for instance, this particular Samsung notebook, that you do get a computer that has very robust speakers, and particularly either a JBL or Dolby speakers, because otherwise, and I used to do my podcast with it was a Sony Vaio. And the speaker quality, once I got this computer in comparison to the Sony Vaio, it went up about 25%. And so that's why I say the speakers are important. So you want to make sure that you get a computer that has really nice speakers on it. Now, you can do a whole variety of different headphones. And so, but the main thing that you want to get with the headphones is that you want to make sure the headphones give you maximum sound quality. There are some professional headphones that you can get with Sony that are great. They usually cost you a little bit though. They're going to probably cost you about $200 to $300. Now, if you want to kind of just basically save money but still get good sound quality, get gaming headphones. Gaming headphones work perfect. In fact, I actually use these gaming headphones, which is the Turtle Beach Air Force 11 gaming headphones for my podcast. And you can also adjust the sound quality on the headphones. I'll show them to you. I have them with me. But you can adjust the sound quality for when you're speaking into the mic on those headphones very easily. You can also basically mute the mic very easily. And before I got to, and actually found out about this by going on a podcast site, because I was like, okay, my sound quality is just not the way I want it to be. And on the forum, one of the people that were participating said, why don't you think about gaming headphones? I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, it works out great. I use them on my podcast and everything. And since I, have used them on my podcast, the sound quality of IU is just went across the mark. I mean, and I also have noticed that with that increase in sound quality, we have increased our listenership, about 50%. Yeah, so yeah, it does. The sound is important. Now, Sound Studio 4. Again, if you're using one, like if you're using Libsyn, or you're using Libsyn, for sure you're going to need this. You're going to need a medium that will allow you to adjust sound and also upload files, okay? And so Studio 4 is one way that you can do that, and you can upload the files to a server, basically use Studio, which is Libsyn, use Studio 4 in order to adjust your sound quality for those files and also adjust the sound quality in the podcast. So that's just one aspect that you can use. It's like $29.99 to do so. Now, this is where it gets a little expensive. If you want to have that mixer, basically if you're using that mixer to take live calls with Speaker, or you're trying to do that with Podbean, or you're trying to do that with Libsyn, you don't necessarily have to buy the mixer, but if you want to have great sound quality, you're probably going to want to invest in a mixer. Now this is just one. This is one of the better ones. There are others, and then basically you would call those sound mixers for podcasts. If you put that on your Google search, you should be able to find different ones for different prices. But this one is a Mackie 1402 VLZ4 mixer, and as you can see, it looks a little complicated, but it is something that you can use in order to get really great sound quality with your podcast.
And that's basically for people calling in.
Yep. That's really in the end to make sure that you don't have echo. Or you can just, use Skype and with BTR, and that will save you investing $400. So the other option that you can use, which is also similar to a mixer, is a JK Audio broadcast host. What that again does allow you to do is basically be able to limit that sound, the echo effect in the sound, for if you're not using Blog Talk Radio, and you want to use Speaker, or you want to use Libsyn, or you want to use Podbean in order to still take those live calls. So, does anybody have any questions about any of this equipment? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so naming my podcast, as I begin this presentation, the first thing that I made note of is that I came up with a name for my podcast, and I thought it was absolutely great. And then I was told later on, you gotta change the name. That is just too hard for people to remember. So I'm glad I got that advice. But in the same aspect, naming your podcast can be either difficult or really easy, depending on what's the show's intent for your audience. So what we're going to do is that we have actually 5 people in the room. We're going to jot some names today and to kind of begin this discussion. So I was going to say groups of 2. I think we may be able to still do, maybe it'll be a group of 3 and then maybe a group of 2. But either way, and if you're online, I also would love you to participate in this. Maybe you're going to have to kind of come up with some names yourself. But then we're going to select 2 names for the following podcast platforms. And we're going to try and provide a brief description of what your podcast would be. Okay? And so here are the platforms. Okay, we're going to do political news and talk, business, food, celebrity gossip, music, pretty much top 40 or jazz, and for a psychic show. And yes, psychic shows do exist in the podcast world. Yes, there are people claiming to be psychics in podcasting. We're going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages, positives and negatives of the names chosen in the next 10 minutes as a group. So if you are participating online, because you're by yourself, I'm not going to obviously make you try and do all of them. Just pick one. If you want to pick business or food or celebrity gossip, just pick one or two and then try and come up with at least 2 names for that podcast, and then a brief description of the program. If you're here in our live session, we'll do 2 each. So basically, let's do celebrity gossip and psychic shows, and then basically business and political news and talk. So if you could come up with at least 2 names, okay, for both of those categories, and a brief description of the program, we'll talk about that. Now, yeah, I'll let you guys kind of get your groups situated amongst yourselves. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah. And then maybe if you guys in the back could kind of talk to me, yeah, that would be great.
I don't, there are only 5 of us.
Right, exactly. Well, how about this? How about all 5 of you get together, since it's only 5, and then basically
For 6.
6. Well,
You could
yeah.
help me, because I'm running the live channel.
Yeah. But basically, since there's 5 of you together, and then it might be actually easier to give each of you a topic. Yeah, I actually like that better. Okay, so basically, Gavin, if I have it correct, is that okay? Could you come up with 2 names for political news and talk and a brief description of the program? I'll give, what's your name, ma'am?
Terry.
Terry, celebrity gossip. Okay. What's your name, ma'am? Stacy. Music, top 40 jazz. Okay. What's your name, sir? Dan, psychic shows. And what's your name, ma'am? Bridget. Okay, let's see here. Business. Okay.
I have a question. I don't really know too much about podcasts yet, so that's
Okay.
why I'm coming in. So is there something like should I have the top 40 jazz and the name so that when people look it up and kind of go through automatically, or is it
Well,
supposed to be
okay,
short, or how does
Let
it?
me try and get, I'll throw you in head. So basically, like for instance, if I was doing a jazz show, you could possibly call it, okay, your name Bridget, right?
Stacy.
Stacy, okay. Smooth jazz interlude with Stacy.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'm using Scribbly Live, so this is for the chat, and then what I'm doing is shooting some towels and putting the video live, but it's also I have a streaming time here, so it's streaming if I post this. Like this is what it looks like on an article page. So this is on a website, so it's got a photo, the description, and then I stuck at the top the Ustream videos, which is live right now, and then I'm done a PowerPoint too. And that's up here at the top. So I use Scribd to embed. Scribd. The chat is Scribble Live.
Is it the same company, Scribd and Scribble?
So Scribd is just to get an embed for PowerPoint, so I can
But
embed.
where's the content produced?
It's in Scribble Live.
So you take it from Scribble, put it in Scribd, and then put it on the website?
Okay, so there's a few components. So she gave me her PowerPoint. I uploaded that to Script to get an embed code. Okay, and then I started a Scribble Live chat. This is right here. And so I embedded, using Scribe, I embedded her PowerPoint here. Okay, and then I embedded the Ustream. I set up the Ustream for today, and I embedded that here in Scribble Live as well. I stuck those at the top, and then I'm running the live chat here where people can ask questions or they can tweet using hashtags. It's going to pop in here, and you're going to see it populate. So no one has asked a question using Twitter, but it's available, or they can type that directly in this chat box here. So this is on the page. Right. Oh, right here. They have to hit comment now. They have to check their name. And then the words after
And that's embedded from Scribble.
yeah, that was a
Okay, we're gonna give it about 3 more minutes and we'll come back as a group.
I can teach you all that stuff if you want to come in.
Yeah, that's wild. Scribble, I've never even heard of
Scribble Live. It's for live blogging. So, for instance, yesterday at the same song, I was bringing in, if anybody was using the hashtag, was it Snow Conference or Snowstorm 2014, whatever the trending hashtags were, bringing it all in a live chat so people could see it. What people were tweeting, and photos from Instagram, their videos from Vine, their videos from Tell.
Scribble brings all that in.
And Rebel Mouse will do the same thing.
Yeah, I saw that you love Rebel Mouse,
Yeah.
but you can't do the chat with Rebel Mouse.
No. And Scribble Live does cost money. Another one says free, so it just depends on what you're trying.
So Scribble pulls it in. You can feed in your Instagram.
Rebel Mouse will do that too. But like you said, I won't do that.
But does Scribble display it on a site like Rebel Mouse does? Well, Rebel Mouse, you have the Rebel Mouse URL, and you have all the pieces of content on that page. Does Scribble do that?
This is what this really looks like.
So it's a very different model.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna come back together. So basically, we'll start at the beginning. So, okay, what did you name your podcast?
Politics. I can't even say it. I have no interest in it. So, no, I have none. It was the best thing to give me. I hated you the most. I was like, that, you know.
Okay.
But then I thought, no, it's the best one I could get because I hate it the most.
Okay,
So,
okay.
So pretty generic, but I came up with the number one is the People's Voice Radio,
Okay, okay.
and then the What They Don't Want You to Know report.
Okay, in a description of your podcast?
Well, I got talking. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
that's okay.
I'll write it out now and do
That's
it at the
okay,
end.
that's fine. Actually, I like what they don't want you to know.
Report.
Yeah, report. Yeah,
Yeah,
people
report.
would immediately be interested in that. Like, I mean, even if you don't do politics.
You can have it.
Yeah, no, but I no.
Because I'm not doing politics.
But people would be, that would be a podcast that would immediately gather, at least a title, would probably gather some listeners' attention. Because it's like, okay, so what is it that he's going to be telling us that we don't know?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so okay, all right, well, great, thank you.
Thank
Ma'am?
you.
Huh.
Okay.
So, this is new. the
Okay,
whole
yeah.
everything don't. So, I had celebrity gossip, which I don't
Yeah.
participate in at all.
Yeah.
And I've got like the dirty laundry line celebrity gossip,
Okay.
or fat and famous.
I like the dirty laundry, because basically, again, if you're doing celebrity gossip, now you would have to, there is a website called Dirty Laundry
Right.
that does celebrity gossip, so you would wanna make sure that they don't have copyright. But otherwise than that, this Dirty Laundry is because basically if you're doing celebrity gossip, a lot of the things that they do are.
Yeah, you're airing their dirty secrets, right?
Right, exactly.
Online, yeah.
So that would be Fab, and then what was the second one?
Fab and Famous?
I would probably go with the first one. Fab and Famous, they can be kind of confusing. Like, okay, who's Fab and who? I mean, Famous is kind of okay, but then Fab is like, it may be confusing.
Right.
Yeah, in order to get listeners. But what was the description of your podcast?
Oh, I don't know, just celebrity gossip. Like,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. All right, your turn.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have Chillin' Without the Smoke.
Okay.
And then all,
That's a good one. Chilling without the smoke.
Right, I like that
all
one.
the sounds from the speakeasy without the smoke.
Okay.
And then Lounging Out with Miss Sternberg and the Ghost of Miles. And it's Jazz with Words.
Okay.
Because I don't like jazz.
Okay, Jess. Okay. Chilling without the smoke. And what was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, the description was all the sounds from the speakeasy without the smoke.
Okay. I like that one. I like the first one.
He's great.
Yeah, and the reason why is because the listeners of jazz, right? They think about, okay, when I'm listening to jazz, I'm going to be relaxing, maybe have a glass of wine, you know, I'm going to just kind of let the rest of the world go past, and I'm just going to enjoy the instrumental music. So to them, that would be chilling, right? But without maybe being inside of a bar that people may, you know, smoke at, or before, at least they did before that law got unpassed in Michigan. But you know, maybe not being around people or even having to smell the smell of smoke. They just want to kind of just have the music and the music itself. So I would actually go with the first one more so than the second one. The second one might be confusing. Okay, sir, how about you in the psychic shows?
Well, I'm an electrical and computer engineer and it gave me the psychic. So this is what I did. I went and searched Urban Dictionary for
Okay.
psychic.
Okay,
I found Future Sight, so that's what I named it.
Okay.
Future Sight, all the predictions fit the podcast.
okay,
Listen in every week to the Future Sight podcast to find out what's going to happen. News, interviews, questions and answers, and predictions.
okay, all right. Future sight. I like the description. I would probably change the future sights. I would probably say, what's your first name again?
Ding.
Dan. Predicting the future with Dan. Yeah, we
I'll go to
know.
Urban Dictionary and find something kind of funny.
Or better yet, let me see. Your life course. Your life's course with Dan. Because you are going to basically give people, you know, predictions into what's going to happen over the course of their life. So that's just some suggestions, but you're not probably doing the psychic show anyway, right? I didn't think so. Okay. All right, ma'am.
Okay, so I came in very late and I don't really know what this is about.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
also got a topic that I'm absolutely foreign to.
Okay, got you.
Business oriented at all.
All right,
so-
that's fine.
So I just, I am gonna be starting Michigan Shifting Gears though in
Okay.
January, so that's kind of all about small businesses in the new economy, so.
Okay.
My thought, was, the podcast called The Power of Small. And, that would be small business ideas, trends, guest entrepreneur interviews about topics of interest to small business owners of 3 to 100 employees.
I
So
like
that would be
that.
like the market for it, but.
I
Yeah.
love the description.
Yeah.
The description.
So
The
Power of
description
Small-
basically makes the title, but you would probably want to make sure that you put something with the power of small. Make sure that in somewhere in that title that people understand is about business.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I realized it was a little bit generic.
Yeah.
It could be about children, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't know better, so.
yeah. But that description was perfect. Okay, all right, I didn't know if we had anything in the live chat, but if not, we're gonna go ahead and move forward. Okay, great. All right. What is the best times and dates to air my podcast? Okay, it's important to pick dates and times to air your podcast that you can commit to and do so on a consistent basis, okay? Let me tell you why this is important. The last thing that you want to say is that I'm going to air my podcast live or even pre-recorded on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then you're only airing it basically on Tuesdays a couple of days out of the month. That's not how you build listenership. So basically, you gotta, whatever days that you commit to, you have to be able to do so on a consistent basis. So if you can only commit to 1 day a week at an hour a day, then that's what your podcast is. If you can commit to, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, that's great. Just because you have the podcast time available, like for instance, if you were using Speaker and you want to do the 3 hour a day option, doesn't mean that you have to do 3 hours a day every day of your podcast. The good thing is that just say that you're committed yourself to a Monday and that's your podcast day. You're going to talk about a topic for a couple hours. You can always basically use, if you needed to do like a special show, you have a special interview, or better yet is a hot button topic that you wanted to just all of a sudden talk about. You can use any of those other days as a special podcast, okay, that you distribute out to your listeners, either pre-recorded or live. But they know for a fact that you're going to come on every Monday at 1 o'clock and they're going to be able to listen to whatever topic that it is that you're talking about. So being committed is very, very important. Developing a regular schedule for your podcast will assist again in building an audience of committed listeners. Just to give you some indications on how that has worked with my show. Originally, my show came on, I have moved it 3 times. I've been at this time very consistently for a while. But originally, my show came on Saturdays and Sundays from 11 to 1. We basically also played around for about 3 months with, what was the days? Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9. Yeah, it didn't work out so well. but then, now we've been on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 1 for about the past year and a half. And starting with the weekend, moving to nights, and then moving now to pretty much weekdays, our podcast has grew with listenership by 32%. And the reason why is because it's not like, sometimes we don't get a lot of calls because people are at work, okay? But we do get a lot of listeners because maybe they can't, talk on the phone while they're at work, but in the same aspect, they can listen to a podcast on their work desk. So we get a lot of listeners. I mean, last year alone, we had 218,000 downloads of our podcast.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that was over the year before that, it was 67,000 downloads for 2012. So yeah, being consistent is very important. For live shows and basically premium time, if you want to do premium airtime, which you can, which is why we experimented from the 7 to 9. Premium airtime is from 6 to 9 o'clock, okay? Pretty much it's called downtime, home time, getting ready to cook time. Maybe I would usually be watching some type of program time, but either way, if you want, that's the premium airtime, and it doesn't matter if you're on speaker, Blog Talk Radio, unless you're on Libsyn or Podbean. Pretty much that premium airtime is going to require for you to have a paid package. You're not going to get the premium airtime if you're doing one of the free packages. You're going to have to podcast some other time, okay? Then, like I said, airing your podcast on a weekday morning can result in less callers, but it's more airtime to talk about important topics or guests that call into your program. As we'll discuss in show notes, it's very important that you keep track of your time during 2 hours. You would think probably in the beginning, oh my gosh, 2 hours, that is just a lot of time. To talk, or maybe even 30 minutes, or maybe even an hour. But before you know it, you'll be hitting the 5-minute mark before your show ends, and you haven't covered your topics, you haven't covered half of the things in your show notes. And so basically you're leaving your listeners, you said, okay, we're gonna cover these topics, and you only covered half of them. So keeping track of your time is very important. When you have a lot of guests, you have to, when you have a lot of callers, you have to learn how to cut them off. Okay, and I literally mean that, because if you don't cut them off, they'll go on for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And before you know it, you're out of airtime for your show. So that's why it's very important that even if you have a weekday morning podcast, and maybe you're only getting 10 callers, maybe you're getting 5, but you have a very important guest, and then you have very important topics to talk about. That's actually better for you. And on the end user's end, because they're actually getting the information that they expect to get inside of your show notes, in comparison to just getting, maybe 5 listeners that have a rant about something that's not directly related to one of the topics that you wanted to talk about. Okay, callers, that is. Okay? Did you have any questions about that? Okay, moving on. Okay, where is the switchboard? Oh boy, I figured I would do this because this one looks like a complete mess, and you would think, oh my God, there's no way I can actually do this, a switchboard. Don't worry, we're gonna talk about it. It's very easy. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of move my mouse here and move and turn around, because it'll make life easier. This is based, if you're in Blog Talk Radio, and it's very similar in speaker, this is what your switchboard is gonna look like when it comes up on your computer. As you can see, you got the calls here, okay, and you can take up to 50 calls at once if you want to. You can have all 50 of them. You don't want to probably have them on your podcast at once, but you can have them in your switchboard. You also have the option, which we'll discuss as I move over here. Basically, you have the option of having them on live. You can have them on mute, which means they can listen, but they won't actually be talking, okay? So they're just listening into the podcast at that point. Or you can actually even talk to them, okay? And that would just be you and them talking, okay? Kind of like a screen, like a call screen. Let me make sure my mouse is not moved over. Using this option, okay? So just say that you had a lot of people that wanted to call in and listen to your show, but then all of them, you did not want all of them on at once. All you do is, let me show you lights, that you put them all on mute, okay? And they're listening to the show as you're, doing your podcast, but they're not, disturbing the flow of your show. Okay, so this screening option is also great when you are basically screening not only just your live callers, but this mouse keeps moving. There you go. But also is great for when you're screening a guest or the interviewee that you have coming on the show. Now, let me see if that will stay there. Okay. So when it's not. All right. So when someone calls in to your show, just say this is a call, right? You have the option here of putting in their name, okay? So that you screen them. Joe's calling in. Okay, this is Joe from Atlanta. I'm going to put in Joe from Atlanta over here, okay? And I'm going to put Joe from Atlanta on mute. And then when I get ready to bring Joe from Atlanta on, I'm going to bring him on live, which is going to give me that red option. So this is basically the switchboard, okay? You also have your audio uploads. These are basically, like, for instance, if you have a bumper. Bumpers are, maybe they're really like a introducing to your show. Just say this is Celebrity Live Talk with Joe, okay? And so basically, she wants to make sure that when people get ready to listen to the show, they know what the show is about. And they also, she also has some information in regards to, maybe some the show description inside of her bumper, so people can understand what it is they're about to listen to. When it comes into your show bumpers, you shouldn't have them more than 2 minutes and 30 seconds, because after that point, you begin to lose people. They're just like, okay, so is the show ever going to be in? Okay. You can also upload different audios. You can pretty much this is unlimited, okay, about how much audio that you can upload, whether you wanna do an interview, you want, it's a video that you know, thought was interesting that you wanted your audience to listen to. This is basically, it gives you an upload, it gives you a search function here that you wanna make sure that you name your audio uploads for you can easily find them, okay? And then basically, you can search that name here, and then if you wanna upload it, you kinda use this plus symbol. Alright, so then the next thing that we'll move to is here, okay? What it does is that this gives you an option to promote your show, okay, via Twitter, Facebook, Blog Talk Radio, right when you're in the middle of doing your show, which is nice. And you just hit the send option, and it already goes to Twitter, Facebook, and also BTR. They also have this in speaker, is very similar to this. If you want to have an episode short link, okay, to send out via social media, you can do that right here. If you want to embed the episode, you kind of copy paste that and then embed it on any blog or a site that you own that you can embed your podcast on. Okay, episode info, that's going to be over here. And basically, this is the information that you have already typed in your show notes, letting people know how long the show is going to be, the maturity level, which is important, even though it's not FCC regulated. If it's a show that children should not be listening to, then you need to have an R rating, okay? So that way, it will be put on hopefully it will be letting people know that's tuning in that it's going to be a maturity show, what type of category it is, and then your tags, which we'll kind of discuss those a little later. Okay, this particular part, which is a chat, you can't see it all, but you can actually launch the chat as in your show. It actually comes off to the side. It has the same thing on speaker. You can launch the small chat, and it will pop off right over to this side, or you can it will pop off a whole new moderator window. So a whole new window in your basically on your computer, and you can engage in live chat while you're doing your show. Okay. You need call-in numbers if you're going to be basically having people call in. Well, first of all, if you wanted to call in, you didn't want to use the Skype function, you can actually call in on your phone. You can host your podcast on your phone if you like. So you would call in via this number, and then they'll ask you for a PIN, and you have to put in your PIN, okay? For guests, they would call in where it says guest number, okay? And you would give this number to guests, and you would also probably put that in your show notes for people that may want to call in during your show. If you need to call out to a guest, you just hit this button right here, you see it there, okay, and you hit it there, and then you can call out to a guest and bring them on to, the show, if they didn't want to call in, okay? And then when you're this on air option, okay, when it's red like this, you are on the air. That means if you do not have your mic on mute, anything that you say at that point, and this is a host, so basically, if you don't have your mic on mute, anything that you say at that point can be heard on your podcast. So it's very, very important to make sure that when you're on air, that you're actually saying your podcast your mic is live, that you're actually saying things that you want your callers to hear. If you just say you needed to play music because just say something happened, you needed to go grab a drink or whatever, basically you put it on mute and you play any of your audio uploads. Mm-hmm.
So if you're recording this, can't you just if you mess up, can you just rewind it and then tape over it? Or?
Yeah. So let's say that you're doing a pre-recorded episode, and so you say something, and you you know what? I didn't mean to talk about that right then. Okay. You can use you can either start that over, which takes all day. You don't want to do that, or you can just continue to do your podcast, and then use a program that will allow you to cut sound files, like Sound Organizer, and cut that part out, and then put the podcast back together again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really easy. It may sound difficult, but trust me, it's very easy to do. I think we got all these parts. So this is yep. So basically, this is what a soundboard would look like. Is in, that's all right here. It is very easy to operate. Again, for the Skype option, that is your Skype button right there. You hit that button and it will go through your computer. Basically, your Skype that's already operating on your computer. It will pull that up and it will call already. You don't have to worry about doing it. It will call your guest call-in number, and it actually also puts in your host pin automatically, and it will connect you right in to start your podcast. What I do recommend is that if you're doing a live show, that you start your podcast at least 5 minutes before. You're not on live. You know, basically, if you're starting your podcast at 11 o'clock and you call in the Skype at 10:55, you're not on live during that time. But if you need to do any adjustments or whatever it may be, you can actually do that within that 5-minute period before your show starts. So, okay. Anybody have any questions about the switchboard?
Can you merge calls?
So in other words, basically, can you have on 2 calls at once?
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure can. So basically what you would do is just say you have Joe and Mary, and you wanted Joe and Mary to be on at the same time. Basically, you just make both of their mics live.
Yep.
Yep.
And the call-in number, can you
Mhm.
put in a number that you want to be the call-in number, or do they give you a different
They
one
give
each
you a
week?
call-in
or-
number. Yeah,
And
it's
how-
the same one. Yep.
So, do you choose the local area? Like, you've got a 646 there, that's New York.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, right. Exactly. So you
Or
don't choose.
626.
Right,
that's
you
not
don't
bad.
choose a local area. With Blog Talk Radio, and I believe also with Speaker, if you wanted to just get a 1-800 number, so you can get that, but you are going to pay that $99 a month. Or with Speaker, I believe it starts at that. Let me see. I think it starts at the $49.90. No, you actually have to pay for that separately. Yeah. Separately.
So,
Mhm.
to just get your feet wet,
Mhm.
you can do the free half
Yeah.
hour a week
Yep.
with this, and they'll give you a permanent number.
Yep.
It's still free.
Yep.
You know what? And you can do everything that you've said there
Yep.
for free for up to 30 minutes a week.
Yep.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
that's
Yep. Okay. All right. Any more questions? All right, we'll go forward. Okay, the ins and outs of podcast notes, which are again very, very important. Now, what you see here is basically this is a podcast that I did with a Dr. Edward Arnott. He was talking about basically, it's called Banking on Kids. That's his business. And basically, his business goes inside of different educational K-12 schools, right? And it actually teaches children about how to operate a bank. They actually work as tellers, they work as customer service agents, and they actually take the money, deposit the money. There's actually a bank manager, et cetera, et cetera. And so what it does is that it lets children understand the meaning of money and beyond just basically, my mom gave me $5, now I'm going to go out to the store and go spend it all. Instead, it allows them to understand the importance of saving and building interest on your money. Okay, so in my show title, I wanted to make sure that people knew who he was, which I've made sure I put his name in there. And then basically a brief description of the topic. Okay. The date. You don't have to put the date. I like to put the date so people know, okay, this podcast is airing on a certain date. I prefer that. I would probably say if you're doing live podcast anyway, you probably want to put a date. And then the time that it starts, which is at 11 o'clock. Okay, I'm moving now to the show notes itself. Each of my podcasts are just like this. Welcome to Independent Underground Radio Live, and then it says, what the Michigan's Top Political Podcast. It says the date and it says the time, and then it says on today's show. And I start talking about in the show notes the topics that I am going to talk about on the show. Okay. And you can also put links inside of your show notes. You can do the same thing with Speaker, too. You can do the same thing with Podcast Bean. So, like, for instance, if I wanted to put a link to Dr. Edward Arnott's website, I can actually do that. I would just highlight it, okay, and it will give me the option of putting a link if people want to go directly to his website and find out more about him. And then I also put inside my show notes a phone number where you can call into the show. And if you want to tweet us during the show, you can do that. Okay, so that's pretty much how my show notes work. Now, show notes, again, tell the audience what the topic of the program will cover during the show. It introduces your guests to your listeners to potential guests and the guest experts for your program. It distinguishes the professionality of your program. It really, really does. If you don't have show notes in there, and you're just gonna be like, well, this is Talking with Susie, it's not gonna make your podcast look very professional. And believe me, there are a lot of podcasters out there that are not professional. You want to stand above the rest. So, writing show notes is very important. Detail. Okay, it would inform the listeners where, when, and what time your program would air. And it also introduces new audience members to your show, people that may want to listen in or share or tell other people about your podcast. They are very important for SEO, which is search engine optimization. Specifically, the descriptions, the keywords, and the title. So, like for instance, if someone did a search on Google for Dr. Edward or not, because I put his name in the title of my show notes here, or the description, this is probably going to come up somewhere in Google within the first page on the, I guess you say the first 10 or 15 slots. Okay, so this podcast, the actual link to this podcast is going to come up. This is no kidding. So that's why it's very important that, you look at, if you have a guest coming on, that you put that guest name, especially if they're a popular guest, inside of the show notes. I interviewed Gary Johnson when he was running for president. And basically, I was so happy to hear that interview. There was no way I was not going to put Gary Johnson's name in the title. Because basically, even though he's not running for president right now, if people look and do a Google search for like Gary Johnson, they're probably going to see that podcast that I did with him. So that's why, and again, that's that SEO, that search engine optimization. So it's very important that, again, you write detailed show notes. Just don't just basically name your podcast and use your title and that's all you do. That you decide not to actually put any other information about the podcast, about the guests, or anything else. And that's not a good way to build an audience. Okay. Did you have any questions?
I think maybe SoundCloud do it, or who does it? They provide transcriptions after the show. Are you going to talk about that?
I can talk about it. Yeah. I sure can. Yeah, and that's not a problem. I will.
Because that'll help for SEO later.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and definitely. Please bring that up inside of our
Okay.
questions, and that's not a problem. Okay, the importance of social media and podcasting. They go hand in hand. Because a podcast basically is RSS feed type of audio or video file if you prefer. Social media goes hand in hand with your podcast. So if you're doing a podcast, that means you need to have a Facebook page dedicated to your podcast, whatever it is, whatever you're talking about. It doesn't have to be your personal Facebook page. You can make a business Facebook page, or a group or a community or something of that nature. But make sure you have a Facebook page dedicated to it. You need to have a Twitter handle dedicated to your podcast. You can have your personal one, but in the same aspect, again, you may not want to, just because you have a personal one, that doesn't necessarily mean you want everyone on your personal Twitter. So basically, if you have a Twitter handle dedicated to your podcast, that just makes it all the more easier to distinguish your personal from your business, which, your podcast is your business, in my opinion. Okay. Pinterest, same thing. They actually have business pages on Pinterest that you can, use just for your podcast if you like. YouTube, you can get more than one channel on YouTube if you're doing a video podcast, which that is an option. Basically, you obviously would already, have your video podcast on YouTube. But if you just basically doing an audio podcast and you want to upload your sounds to YouTube, you can do that. You can do that, and you just download it and then you upload it as a video file. So YouTube can be important. I don't upload all my interviews to YouTube. I do upload just the important ones. It just is an introduction for YouTube users to maybe want to come and actually listen in on the regular podcast. So, okay. Same thing with Google Plus. Google Plus, you can have personal, you can have business, so you can do a Google Plus page for your podcast if you like. I'm not a big user of Instagram, but my daughter is. And so just basically like if you go out and do different, just say you're doing a remote location type of podcast, which you can, just say you want to take some pictures there of people that, you know, maybe you interviewed or whatever at the remote location. Yeah, Instagram is a great way to get those pictures, you know, distributed. Okay. And then you have, this is just a couple of different blogging sites. There's more out there. I'm a user of Blogger, which is through Google, okay? And that's basically, again, if you want to have a place that is your site, that you upload and embed your files, that is dedicated to your podcast, you can do that via blog, with either on Blogger, or you can do it also on WordPress. So that's basically the importance of social media and podcasting.
So you were saying that you need to have like a Facebook page dedicated to your podcast, and so is WordPress? I work at a nonprofit, and so like would I just put it on my WordPress and then like say, hey, check out our podcast on the Facebook page and the Twitter, or do I still need like a separate account for that? Like,
Okay, so like for instance, all right, let me make sure I have it correct here. So you work for a nonprofit, you set up a Twitter handle for your podcast, and you set up a WordPress site, right?
Well, it's not for the podcast, like we
Okay.
have one for the company.
Okay.
And so I'm just thinking, like, do I need to have my own Facebook page and Twitter account for the podcast, or
Probably not at that point. I mean, because it's going to be, if I have it correct, your podcast is going to be a part of maybe for the nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay, then if that's, and you already have a separate, you have a Twitter handle and a word, then you're fine.
Okay.
I'm saying in this case, it's more of if you're just starting a podcast, it's not associated with a business already. You're doing it just for you.
Okay.
You would need to obviously set up the, yeah. Did anybody else have any questions? All right, we'll move on. Can I make money at this? If so, how? Yes, you can. So, they do have revenue sharing. It's not much, I'll be honest, but it's something that you can get with Blog Talk Radio, Speaker, and Podbean. Usually that's based off of the more listeners that you have. Basically, they are listening to those, those, I guess you could say, those mini commercials that come on before or after your podcast. They're looking at, if you're on Blog Talk Radio or Speaker, they're looking at maybe the ads that are on the side of your podcast, and they're looking at those. Either way, you can actually get a little bit of money off that. The revenue sharing, I can speak for BTR. The revenue sharing that I do with BTR, it actually allows me to pretty much air my podcast for free. So, I mean, that's nice. I do the $39.99 option, and the revenue sharing that I get per month pays for that plus a little bit more. And that's based off of listenership. But again, the same thing with Speaker, and they do have that option with Podbean. Podbean actually will put they actually put commercials. You have an option to put commercials through, I think, a third party affiliation that Podbean has inside of your podcast, actual commercials. So that might be something to check out. Business sponsorships. Yay, yes, you can get people to sponsor your podcast. And with the sponsorship, you can make your commercials or voiceovers or bumpers for them. And with that, or either they can give you a commercial, a sound file, MP3 preferably, or voiceovers or a bumper. And then you would play that on your podcast. You want to charge, obviously, based on the number of plays that they would have per month. You would want to give, if to say, I'm going to charge $12.50, and I'll play it, if you have a once per week podcast, I'll pay it once a month for $12.50, each podcast. you know, and that's not a lot. I mean, actually, and depending on your listenership, just say you're in the building stages and you have, you know, just about, just say you're building, so you're looking at about 2,500 listeners per month. Well, that's 2,500 listeners for $12.50 a podcast that business is going to be able to get their advertisement out to. That is the cheapest form of advertising, and in the same aspect, the good thing about podcasts is that people can always go back and listen to that particular show. So, just say it's a year later, you had on, I don't know, just say you're doing a cooking show and you had on Rachel Ray, right? And someone's looking for Rachel Ray, and then later on they are doing a Google search and they come up on your podcast, and you still have that commercial from that person that sponsored your podcast from a year ago. They still have the opportunity to make money, you know, off of that commercial that you played on your show. And in the same aspect, it only cost them $12.50. They may have got, you know, 50 customers from it, you know. So I mean, it's the way that you sell it, but in the same aspect, it is a great medium to get out information for businesses. On-site event coverage. Yeah, if you take your podcast on site, you say you're doing something at whatever event, maybe you're taking your podcast to the auto show coming up. You can actually charge for that, and it's called remote podcasting or on-site event coverage. So you would charge a fee based on however much that you believe that obviously you should make from that particular remote podcast. Affiliate marketing, Audible.com. I love Audible. Audible.com basically allows you, and you put it in as a bumper, and basically what I usually say is that Independent Underground Radio Live is sponsored by Audible.com. You can receive 2 free downloads of any audiobook that you choose per month for 30 days. You don't have to necessarily keep it, but if you do keep it, it's $14.95 per month, or you can just try it out for 30 days and see if you like it. So go ahead and go to Audible.com, and remember that you heard about it on Independent Underground Radio Live. Now, the good thing about Audible, whether they keep it or not, the fact that they tried it, you get a $15 affiliate market fee. Yes. Yes, you do. So as long as they try it, they put in their card information, right? And if they cancel it on day 29, you are getting $15 for that.
Free audiobooks.
Yeah, and they're getting 2 free audiobooks.
How do they know, just because you said it on the show, how do they know?
Where to go? Okay,
No, how do Audible know it was you?
Because you have a tracking code, okay? So basically, when I do that little spiel, I also will tell them to go and to use this tracking code, basically, when they go into Audible, or either I direct them to my website where they click on a JPEG that already has that tracking code in there.
They're not going to do that.
Oh, yes,
they
they
go
will.
straight to Audible.
Trust me. It actually works really well. Either I put the tracking code in a bumper, okay, so that way it's affiliated inside. When they go to Audible, they're putting in that tracking code inside the bumper, or they're putting in that tracking code when they get ready to take advantage of the offer. I also put it on my Facebook page, okay, so when they click, automatically it's tracking that affiliate marketing point for me. So as soon as they fill out the information, then I'm getting that $15 because it's already set up with that tracking code and in the link. Does that make sense?
And you get that how? Because you set that up ahead of time with Audible.com?
Yep, exactly.
Is that
Yep.
$15 per person?
15.
Per person?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I said I love Audible. I really do. It definitely helps. Then you also have Amazon. You can do affiliate codes with them. Commission Junction, that's another option. Also in LinkShare. All of those pay differently based on what it is that the user is required to do. Maybe they might be required to sign up for the site. Maybe they might be required to buy something at the site. So you might want to plug, if it's a book on Amazon, you might want to plug a particular book that fits into your podcast. So that way, they'll be more apt to want to go there and sign up. Okay? Google Assets. If you have a website that's affiliated with your podcast, you can actually make money off of Google Assets. And then podcast subscriptions. People subscribe to your podcast, you can, again, that's that private. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, you gotta make it private. Upload it to SoundCloud or another medium that lets you put it behind a paywall. And then basically they would have to pay a certain amount to access that podcast, or maybe that interview with that guest, or it's a special podcast that you need to pay $3 or $4 for.
And SoundCloud lets you put a paywall up.
I'm sorry?
SoundCloud lets you put a paywall.
Yes, they do.
They do it.
Mm-hmm. They sure do. Some of it, like for instance, most people here probably would know who he is, but Norman Goldman, he is doing that right now because a lot of the progressive talk shows are being pretty much eliminated off FCC radio. So he has got into podcasting, and he has certain podcasts that he does that's behind a paywall that you have to pay in order to subscribe. But once you do that, you get all that information for the course of the year. So I mean, it's getting pretty popular, those paid podcast subscriptions. I haven't went there yet. Yeah, I do pretty good with Audible, so I haven't had to go there yet. But that's just me personally. Okay, now I don't know how much time we have left. We only have like a half hour, and so basically I'm going to come back to this one. And basically go straight to the next slide and give people a chance to ask any questions and queries or explanations on anything that we share in the presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at me.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there like a the show notes are kind of like post-production, so to
Yeah.
speak. But what do you use going in? Do you have some type of checklist or notes?
Yeah, okay, so like for instance, actually the show notes are pre-production instead of post, I'm sorry. And then you can also use show notes basically in order to keep you on track with your podcast. So, like for instance, if you wanted to talk, okay, here's the best way. This is how I used to do it. I'm good at it now, so I don't really do the written show notes. I kind of just do the pre-production show notes and kind of go from there. But if you wanted to do like show notes to keep you on track during your podcast, you can actually do that maybe via Notepad, and then you print them out. You can do it basically via Word, or if you have the Google version of Word, you can do that. You write it out. Say for 15 minutes, I'm going to be talking about this topic, or for 15 minutes, that would be like from your podcast started to. So basically, you do your interlude. Your interlude is 5 minutes. From there, basically from 1:05 until basically 1:20, I'm going to talk about this topic. You would put that inside of your show notes. You would be also looking at your computer, okay, over on the side where you have your clock at, to make sure that you stay on track, okay? And then from 1:20 until basically 1:24, it's going to be commercial time. Okay, so you can put all that information inside of your written show notes that you would, kind of operate the program with. I hope that answered that question.
Well, sure, you put it in a document. I was looking more for, I noticed when I watch video podcasts, sometimes either pre-show or post-show, they make reference or go, when they do the segues, you see them pick up the copy for the commercial.
Yeah.
But they seem to be, the better ones seem to be extremely well organized. I'm just wondering if there's some template, or maybe even some software that would like show a clock saying, go to commercial.
Yes, there is, but it is going to be separate. I hope this makes sense. Here's the best way that I would say that you may want to do that. Usually, and the reason why you see that, even though the reason why you're seeing that, but what you're not seeing is the production. Okay, so usually they're having a production assistant at that point. Okay, but you can still do with a speaker or either with Blog Talk Radio. let me go back a little bit, and I'm gonna kind of explain this so this will make sense, because otherwise it's gonna be a little weird. Okay, so here's your switchboard, right? Okay, you're not the only person that can see this switchboard. If you wanted to have a production assistant that was over in California, okay, and you wanted them to have access to your switchboard, they can do that. What they would have to do is that they have to log in as you, okay? And then once they log in as you, they're gonna bring up the studio. And then they would have access to the switchboard. Now, with that, they're gonna have to call into the guest number, okay? All right, and then once they come to the guest number, then they would also have, you can, pretty much they can have control at that point since they have the access to the switchboard in order to be your production assistant. Okay, so they can basically, their whole job would be to make sure that you stay on time. Your commercials start at a certain time. Your guest interviews end at a certain time. They begin at a certain time. They may want to bring in music, a small amount of music, and then kind of increase the sound. Okay, to let you know that that particular segment is over. Okay, and you can basically do 2 or 3. You know, I would say no more than 2 though. You can do 2 production assistants. You can have a production assistant and a co-host that will act as a second backup for the production assistant if something was to occur, and maybe the production assistant didn't. Okay, oh wait a minute, it's like 1:23. We're supposed to be taking a commercial right now. The co-host knows that, so they go ahead and they start the musical interlude that leads to that commercial. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed that the shows that I enjoy the most and
Mhm.
are most professional always seem to have, you don't necessarily see it, but they have extensive preparation,
They
a lot
do.
of coordination, and then they have show notes at the end.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just, a big 3-hour ramble.
And that's very important. I mean, to specifically get into a little bit more detail of what you're talking about, if you don't prepare your show ahead of time, it's going to sound like ramble. So if you are not basically, okay, so if I was talking about the topic, let's go back to the Edward or not interview. If I didn't prepare my questions ahead of time, if I didn't prepare basically maybe the video interview that he did, and I actually played that as audio file, talking about baking on kids and what's that's about, what's the details of his organization. If I didn't also maybe have a topic that was dealing with finance on that show before I brought him on, or even after he finished his interview. Just say all of a sudden I just switched to, I don't know, we're just going to start talking about cats after he was on. That's not going to seem very professional, okay? And so you do have to think about your topic, okay? You got to actually pre-plan it, and then you have to kind of set up a show around those topics, and you have to find guests that will fit into those topics. Otherwise, it's going to seem like 3 hours worth of rambling. That is correct, sir. Any other questions?
The transcripts one?
Yes. Okay. So Blog Talk Radio does allow you, and you can get them with speaker too. You can basically get your transcripts. It costs a little money. I would say what is that? Oh gosh, it's gonna come to me. There is an option that you can get people to write your transcripts for you. I want to say Odesk. You can use a transcriber with Odesk.
Yeah.
And you would have to set up however much it is that you want to, to pay them. But they can actually transcribe your show notes for you. I would say that would probably be the best option, because if you use one of the server options, it's going to be kind of expensive. Like, I think Blog Talk Radio is like what, $199? So yeah, that's crazy. You can find someone that can just transcribe your show notes for a lot less than $199. Did you have another question?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'm going forward. Do we have any more questions in the live chat, or? Okay. And then I guess my question for you is that, do you think now that you at least have everything at least the beginning parts, to be able to host your own podcast. Okay. Now, if you have any other questions, or if you think of questions even after this particular presentation, you can always feel free to contact me. My email is info@iunewstalk.com. Again, that's info@iu, I as in ice cream, U as in Ulysses, newstalk.com. My phone number is 734-328-3025. And you can catch the podcast at blogtalkradio.com, and it's /ROJS radio. So, and pretty much I also have business cards. I'll make sure I give them out to people that are here. And thank you for the for attending the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Will you collect
Really
the
good.
homework?
I'm sorry?
Are we gonna collect the homework?
Yeah, the homework. Yes, I forgot about that. If you do have the homework, I would love to collect that.
Do you mind just popping the first slide up?
Yeah, if you want to see another slide, just let
the-
me know. I can go
It was
back
the one with the
forward.
radio,
Yeah.
with the options, the first one.
Did you post these slides in one of your emails?
I think that they
Oh,
are
the next
posted.
slide, if you
They're
could,
online,
please.
so
Yeah.
through
No.
our
No,
meetup and then the
Sec-
Facebook page.
yeah, that,
Or was it the next one?
the next one. Yeah.
Okay, yep, there you go. Feel free to write down anything you
So Spreaker, you can do actually 20 hours a month free.
hold on. No. With Speaker, you can do up to 30 minutes of podcast, up to 10 hours a month free.
That's 20 podcasts.
Yeah.
So you can do 20 podcasts a month
Mhm,
free.
Yeah. So it's 30 minutes per podcast.
Yeah.
Mhm. Which is not bad, for beginning. Yeah, it's definitely not bad. Again, it depends on what it is that your topic is about, and if you can keep it within that 30-minute format, that's great. I always say that at the very least, if you're doing a 30-minute show, which it should be the standard, even if you're doing a 2-hour show, you want to take out 3 minutes for the beginning, for at least 2 minutes and 30 seconds for your beginning bumper, or less, but your bumper should be no less than 2 minutes. You want to take out basically at least another minute to 3 if you're going to be very short on a 30-second podcast. 30-minute podcast, and say what your podcast is about. And then you also got to give some minutes towards the end, towards your exit bumper. So you may only have about 23 minutes of talk time on a 30-minute podcast. So you got to be fairly quick.
What's the one next to SoundCloud?
Libsyn, it's LIBSYN.
Thanks.
Yeah. Alright, and if any